Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. I'm Brian Kelly, CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications. Thank you for joining us today. And I usually have the honor of sharing a little bit of information about our generous sponsor, Consumers Credit Union. But today we're actually joined by the wonderful Lynne Jarman-Johnson, who is going to be able to share some information on some exciting things happening there. So I'll turn it over to you, Brian and Lynne.
All right, very good. Well, you know how much we love to have Lynne on the show. I think the way that I like to describe it is that I love Lynne Jarman-Johnson. I don't care who knows. Consumers Credit Union has been such a great partner of SBAM and our members, and Lynne's involved in so many things in the community, and something good is happening, particularly in West Michigan. You'll usually find her there. So Lynne, thanks for the support of SBAM and our members, our mission here. And also wanted to, I think you've got some props here today to share with us. Some exciting things happening there.
I do. Well, first off, I'd like to just say thank you. It has been just such a wonderful partnership. We're so excited for 2024 to even go deeper into those relationships that we make with the small businesses all across Michigan. Right behind me, you can see that it is a beautiful afternoon here in West Michigan. I'm in Grand Rapids today. Below me is the Anabon Park, and there are some huge, giant blow-up frogs that look so cool. And it's the start of the World of Winter here in Grand Rapids, which is great for small businesses all across, not only here, but people who are coming from all over that are bringing in some wonderful local trades. So really excited about that. And join us in Grand Rapids, Michigan. But now let's talk about the really big stuff, and that's your business. Consumers Credit Union is so excited to partner with businesses all across the state, as I said. And I'm going to give you a quiz. What does this mean right here? Do you know what this is? It's a quiz.
It's like a red balloon to me.
It's a red balloon. You know, what do businesses face sometimes with not being able to sleep at night when all of a sudden a big balloon loan payment comes up? Not with Consumers Credit Union. So I just want all of your businesses to know that if you do have a banking relationship that you're a little bit worried about because of some lending balloon payments that are coming, that's one thing that we do not do. We do reprice with you, but it isn't anything that's going to give you headaches, and we love that with our small businesses and our businesses that can really grow without those headaches. Okay, one more thing for you. Here's a gift for 2024.
5%.
5% business money market. How about that? Can't get better. 2024. And a small business membership through SBAM. Then you're golden.
Wow, this sounds like everything that a small business owner would need. That's awesome.
Thank you. Well, honestly, you know, wherever anyone begs, we really want just to say to everybody, have a great year and continue to support SBAM, because this is where we learn all our information and can continue to help you grow.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Lynne, for sharing it, and also just the opportunity both on the lending side for de-stressing the balloon payment process, but then also for stretching on making sure that our members' money is working for them. So thanks so much. All right. Well, Sarah, we've got some other big topics, some other big changes that
we do. We do. Thank you, Lynne, so much for being here. Now we're going to move on to beneficial ownership. So, Brian, you've covered a little bit about beneficial ownership on this show in the past, and we've invited Warner Norcross and Judd's Corinne Sprague to come on Monday's show. So before we talk with her, Brian, can you just give a little bit of a background about beneficial ownership and why somebody might want to tune in on Monday?
Yeah, this is something that has been kind of percolating in Congress, so not in our state legislature, but in federal Congress over the last several years, is this idea of it's anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism efforts that that the federal government wants to be able to move forward with, but they've, in order to do that, they want to know who are the beneficial owners of virtually every single business organization, including like LLCs, and I shouldn't say including small LLCs, I'll say especially small LLCs. It seems like that's the thing that the type of entity that they're most interested in, because they say that that's where terrorism money moves around and where money laundering can occur. So what they were looking for is, instead of having in the past, it's this type of information has been provided, but it's been through the banking system. So banks and credit unions previously were required to report up what they knew about who the beneficial owners of entities were up to the federal government and a department called FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Division of the federal government. And so banks and credit unions were never crazy about having that responsibility, because they didn't necessarily always know who the beneficial owners of every entity was. And when there were changes in it, they would just know who were signers on an account. And so they were successfully able to kind of shed themselves of responsibility. Now it is your responsibility, the owner of the business, to report this information. And so who are the beneficial owners of virtually every entity, and for that to be reported, and then whenever there are changes made, for that to be reported as well. So it's a pretty big deal. I have visited the site, but where the reporting is required, and it's the sort of thing I think most people are going to be able to handle on their own. But it is kind of an intimidating website. Usually government sites are. So we wanted to have Warner Norcross on Monday. They'll be on the briefing, and they're going to walk us through, just in a practical sense, what this means and what is expected of our members. It was something that, frankly, when it was passing in Congress, we did oppose it. It's something that we did not want, and just an additional reporting requirement on small businesses. We didn't want that. There is some chance, I think, that there will be a challenge legally on this. Can they get this information for law enforcement purposes without having some sort of reason to suspect that something has been done wrong? Is it reasonable, or is it in terms of the search and seizure requirements and the constitutional protections? So while there are some legal questions out there, and potentially there could be some challenges, it is the sort of thing we do want you to know about, number one, but then also be equipped and empowered to do what you need to do to make sure that you're overall compliant. So coming up Monday, you'll not want to miss our small business briefing, where we'll walk through that, but then also we'll have some follow-on resources that we make available for you to, or whoever is empowered on your team, to follow through with this, to make sure you're doing everything that you need to do.
Yes, thanks. So tune in Monday, and then we are in the process of scheduling a webinar too for end of the month, early February timeframe. So we'll have more information on that. All right, let's talk about a big issue that happened this week. The United States Department of Labor issued its rules regarding independent contractors. So Brian, can you start off with just a brief overview of that rule?
Yeah, this is an issue that has been a bit of a ping pong ball. It's gone back and forth some in terms of what the standards are for somebody to be considered an independent contractor versus an employee. And with the rise of independent contractors as a huge driver in our economy these days, this issue has really kind of come to a head. And while I don't think that small business use of independent contractors is the main driver behind this big change in the regulations, I do think it is fair to say that that small business are being kind of caught up in a fight among the giants. So with rideshare services and delivery services, so think DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber, Lyft, those types of entities, it does appear as though what the federal government is really looking to do is to kind of create a scenario where they can maybe force those entities to hire their drivers as employees as opposed to having them operate as independent contractors. Now, that you might think that that does, if you're a restaurant, of course, that does affect you, but you might think that doesn't affect you that much. But they've changed the rules in a way that the impact is much broader than that. And I want to make sure we don't conflate this with the things that we're worried about at the state level. There was legislation at the state level that we feel pretty confident that is not going to pass now, that would have been more damaging, more restrictive in terms of the use of independent contractors. Instead, so at the state level, we think that it was pretty adequately stopped for this term. At the federal level, the U.S. Department of Labor, they passed a rule change in a department. It didn't require that a law be changed. And what they did essentially has gone back to the rules that were in place at the time of the Obama administration. So different administrations changed administrative rules. The Obama administration had a set of rules that were fairly subjective, although because they were in place for a while, that stuff got worked out, court cases, practices, and so forth. Subjective rules, but by the end of that administration, you kind of knew what they meant. And then the Trump administration changed the rules to put in very bright line standards, to have things that were priorities. Say, here are the main things. As long as you do these things, you know that as somebody having independent contractor status is legal. And so what's happening now is those bright line standards are being erased and replaced with the previous more subjective standards. And now, on the one hand, you might say, well, okay, there might be a subjective, but at least we know what they were. What we don't know, and what I can't really opine on at this point, is whether the regulators today will interpret the more subjective standards the same way that the regulators did, say, 8 years ago. They're literally different people, right? Different regulators. Are they going to read the subjective standards and apply them across the economy more like before, or is it going to be more aggressive than before? We really don't know. But between now, so there's about 60 days between when they published the rules, which was yesterday. They published the rule yesterday. 60 days later, March 11th, is when the new independent contractor status takes effect.
All right, so I know that the document was very long, very thorough. There were several FAQs included, and we pulled some of that out and we'll share it here in the chat too. But what analysis guides whether a worker is an employee or an independent contractor under this new rule or final rule?
Right, so as of March 11th, the standards, it goes to a 6-part test. And the 6-part test does not, there's no aspect of the 6-part test that is the main thing. So any of the 6 parts, if you don't meet any of the standards, it could potentially disqualify a person from independent contractor status and require them to be treated as an employee. And so just to run over what those items are. Number 1, opportunity for profit or loss depending on managerial skill. And so on the one hand, so this is very subjective, what's the managerial skill of a person, and can they make more or less based on that, or are they essentially like an employee? They're just doing some work and it's the same no matter what their skill is. That's, again, a judgment call that you could imagine why they did this in the, say, Uber type scenario, where a person is, they have a vehicle and they're riding people, but Uber is controlling, what the price is based on how many miles, what the traffic and the amount of time. And so they don't really have an opportunity to make more or less on a particular drive, but they might argue that they can make more or less depending on when they drive, or how often they drive, or how fuel efficient their car is. So you can see how it's not really clear whether or not how this would be applied. But so number 1, opportunity for profit or loss depending on managerial skill. That's the first standard or criteria. Number 2, investments by the worker and potential employee. So this is that kind of that age-old, did you bring your own tools to the job, or did the employer provide the tools for the job? So so if the employee or the employee slash independent contractor, depending on which side of the line you're on, if they have their own equipment, they're using their own equipment, then it would be on the independent contractor side. If they use the business's equipment, it's on the employee side. Number three, degree of permanence of the work relationship. This is the one that really kind of bothers me the most, is because everybody in business, including independent contractors, like to have long-term relationships with their customers. They don't want fly-by-night usually. They want to have the customers over long periods of time. But under this standard, the degree of permanence of the work relationship is something that counts against independent contractor status. So that what the federal government in this case is saying is, well, you're more like an employee. If you have somebody that you work for as an independent contractor for a long period of time, you're more like an employee than an independent contractor. Apply that to any other business, an LLC that has a customer that's been with them 20 years. It doesn't make sense anywhere else. It really doesn't make sense here. How aggressive will they be with that? We really don't know yet. Number four, nature and degree of control. So again, this is one where before we're programmed to think, well, does the employer control the schedule? That was in the previous rules that were kind of bright line. If a person is doing the work whenever they want to do the work, you're an independent contractor if you're setting your own schedule. What that is replaced with is saying the nature and degree of control overall of the work is something that could count toward employee status instead of independent contractor status. Number five, extent to which the work performed is an integral part of the potential employer's business. I don't know what to do with this one, folks. The extent to which the work performed is an integral part of the potential employer's business. Why would you hire for somebody to do work that's not an integral part of your business? It's so like how integral? This is, again, it's very, very subjective. It's difficult to say in this current environment of the regulatory systems. What does that really, what does that mean? So if I do work that is really super important to my customer as an independent contractor, that counts against me somehow in this, in terms of my independence from the employer. And then number six is the degree of skill and initiative that is required for the job. So you see on all of these, very, very subjective where you fall on the line. And so this, I think, will be a bit of a frustrating transition, even though it is accurate to say that these rules look and sound a lot like the Obama administration rules. The people that are enforcing them today are not required, are not under any obligation whatsoever to enforce them according to how they did in the previous administration. So that's not we can't really fall back on that and say, oh, well, the way this provision was interpreted back in 2012 was like this, therefore we're good now. Just because it was interpreted that way in 2012 doesn't mean it will be today. So really, I think that to the extent that you are an independent contractor or you use independent contractors, I would encourage you to go to sbam.org, where all that stuff I just went over, you can take a look. It's the lead article, I think, on our homepage, and just to go through and kind of put yourself in the mindset of documentation of why, the argument that you would use to say why you fall on this side of the line versus that side of the line, to really understand that. You might need to have an employment attorney if you have or use one, especially if you feel like you're kind of on the edge, you're operating in gray areas, not totally clear, and you don't feel really confident. This might be a time to get some professional advice in terms of how you might need to operate in the future, because I can tell you that what they misclassification of employees as independent contractors, the term that they use in the regulatory agency for that is payroll fraud. Okay, this is not the sort of thing that you want to just brush over or just assume that it won't happen if somebody on your team reports you. It's treated like a thing where they come in and you've got to prove it. So really taking a look at all of your independent contractor relationships is important. But I also don't want to scare you off using independent contractors. So I think that would be a travesty if people said, you know what, sounds too risky and I don't want to use independent contractors anymore. Independent contractors are small businesses, and the idea of of, uh, of, of essentially just deciding you're not going to go that direction anymore, I think would be a terrible unintended but not unforeseen consequence of these rules. So so taking a look at them and treating them seriously is going to be a really important aspect of what our small business owners will need to do between now and March 11th. Again, if you use independent contractors or if you are an independent contractor, understanding what these rules are and being able to articulate why you feel you land on the right side.
Well, thanks for that synopsis, Brian. I know it can be confusing and, like you said, frustrating. So we will do our best to continue to provide you with the information you need to be compliant and make smart decisions. Just a reminder that some of our membership levels do have access to free Ask an Expert services with both legal and HR professionals. So if you're a VIP or elite member, you're able to utilize those services, and they can certainly, our partners there can certainly help you through this process as well. So we do have those available to members and are here to help. That is almost all we have for today, but I did want to let everyone know that next week, Tuesday, we are hosting a webinar called Leading for Wellbeing, Navigating Mental Health in Your Business. So I know mental health is a big topic and something that is in the news a lot lately. So if you're interested in learning more about how you can model this in your small business, join us on the 16th at 10:30 a.m. And just a reminder too, if you're ever interested in these topics but aren't able to make it live, if you register, that will ensure you get the recording as soon as we are done.
Actually, Sarah, there's one more thing I wanted to mention too. The MEDC has a survey that is live and active right now, and they're really looking for second stage feedback from second stage companies, which we're thrilled about that they're interested in this. They created a survey just for second stage companies, and while it's kind of hard to define exactly what that means, you know, there should be businesses past the startup phase, between 10 and 99 employees, revenues between $1 and $50 million. So like the second stage growth companies, they really want to evaluate the services that they're offering, and then also awareness that in the marketplace for the things that they do, the value they provide, what is needed for the future. The idea that they're paying attention to or looking at those middle companies, the ones that are past startup but aren't big, that is it's a really good sign, and we would love to have robust participation in that survey. We've shared it with some of our weekly newsletter and so forth, but we'll put it in the comments as well, so that if that sounds like you, if you're a second stage company, the more response, the more feedback that the MEDC gets, the better they'll be able to establish resources and make priorities with the resources they have, and create programming that are specific to the needs of second stage companies. So the fact that they're asking is a really, really good sign. Please do participate if that sounds like you.
All right, yes, thanks for that reminder. We'll be certain to share that here in the chat. All right, thank you all for joining us today. As Brian said, we'll be back here Monday with the attorney from Warner Norcross and Judd, and we'll see you then.
Thanks so much.